Okay, today is the 14th of October 1999, and it's Thursday at 4 o'clock, and we are at Mr. Manuel Castillo's house, and we're gonna be doing an interview about U.S. Latinos and Latinas in World War II. Okay, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Here in Austin. We were born here in Austin,
When were you born?
1922.
1922. And you grew up here too, right? You grew up here?
Yep.
Grew up here?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about your family and what did your family life was like?
We were 9 in the family, and we were 4 girls and 5 boys.
And what else?
And we were, all of us were born here in South Austin. And so we grew up here. We attended Fulmore School.
And were you the oldest one or?
No, I have a sister, Mary, she's 84. And then I had another sister, Lucy, and she was 82. And then I have a sister that was Helen. She's we're all 2 years apart. You know. Then I was next. I was the 4th in the family, and I was. I was born on 22 in August 3rd, and I went to school, and then I dropped out. When I was in the 5th grade, and I passed to the 6th grade, and it was kind of rough. My dad was, hard on him, so I just took off from school, and I went to work, and I was 15 at the time.
When you were in 5th grade?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you work?
Well, I started working as a laborer, a contractor, and also I worked for Capital Chevrolet, and then there was another company, car dealer. I worked with them, and then I worked with as a boss boy and a dishwasher.
How was your daily life when you were growing up?
Well, when we were growing up, my father ran it, and it looked like we paid the rent, but people that owned the house would come and tell them they needed the house, we had to move, and so we would move somewhere else, and, just kept on. Finally, in 1935, we moved up next door, 1307. And we lived there, until I got married. I went to the service, came back. And before I went to the service, I was working, they were building Camp Swift. Okay, and I worked there as a truck driver. And it was kind of rough there, so then my brother-in-law decided to go into Fort Hood, which was Camp, let's see, it was a camp at the time, it was a fort then. And I worked there as a truck driver. We were delivering the lumber to different sections, and we had to load the lumber on the truck, and then we'd go, and my brother-in-law came up with the idea of we had a flatbed on the truck, and we had to they would load it up and then we would have to unload it. And my brother-in-law came up with an idea that they took the bed off, put some 4-inch pipes across the bed, not just on the truck, they did. And he got some chains and all that, so they would load me. And at the place where they had the lumber. And then when I would go and deliver it, then I would take the chains off, and I'd take two befores off, and I laid them on the ground, and then I used those booms to tighten them back up. And then would drive back, put my brakes on, and a whole bunch of lumber would slide off, and then I'd go down and take the chains off, and then I'd go and they load me up again. And that's how then I broke my foot after that, and couldn't work. I broke my left foot. I had a cast on for 40 days. And during that time, a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to work at Wilkie Funeral Home at the time. So I went ahead and worked there, and I still had my cast, but I could get around. So I worked there for a few months, and then I was drafted. I went into the service. My mother and dad didn't want me to go, but I wanted to go, so I was still limping with my foot. So I went into the service, and I went in November, and then it was in 42. And then I didn't get discharged until 1945. Because I was wounded in October the 13th in Germany, and then they sent me back, to the field hospital, and that's all I remember, And when I was wounded, I was blind, for 5 months. The doctor told me that, I could hear him talk. 2 doctors had been seeing me, and then they didn't know if I was going to stay blind or not. They called a French doctor, Dr. Pierre, and he examined me, and I could hear him talk next to my bed. And he told me that if I didn't get up, like a lot of GI did, that I could probably get my eyesight back, but I had to try and do it. So I did, and my vision gradually came back. I have some spots in my eye that I don't see, but I can get around.
Okay. What did your parents do?
Well, my mother was just a housewife. And when I got back from the service, my father was a laborer at first, and then he got to where he could do rock work. He never attended school, so he learned the hard way, And then after that, when I got back from the service, he was a painter, and then he would contract, work as a painter. And my brother Lee was helping him out. And then he was drafted after I got back. So he stayed out, and then I helped my father paint. And then after that, I went to school to be an auto mechanic, GI, and a welder. But at that time, the work was real slow. There was nothing going. So I went back to painting with my dad. And my dad got sick. He had cancer. And so my brother and I took over, and we would get the jobs and work together.
How old were you at this time?
Nothing.
How old were you during at this time?
I was, well, I was 25, but then when we, that was when we took over. Yeah, because I was discharged when I was about 23, and I was 2 years that I couldn't work. I was all messed up. So it must have been about when we started doing, the work, after my dad got sick, and he got sick around 1950, and that was the year that I got married, and he died in 1952, about a year and a half after he got sick. So my brother and I kept on working together, and had to pay my doctor's bills for my dad. And so after he died, we stayed together. And before that, my brother Pete, the youngest one, had gone into the service. And I went in, and I was in the Army, the infantry. My brother Lee was in the ordnance, and my brother Pete was in engineers. Yeah. Then when my dad died, they discharged my brother Pete to come stay because my other brother had already been married, and then I got married. But I built this house, to stay close to my parents, And the reason I built that house was because when I was a little boy, we were moving around, and I was getting about 10 or 12, and I said, when I grow up, I hope God permit me to build my own house before I get married. And he did, And I built the house, and we got married in 1950. So I kept on painting, and then I was doing mechanic work on the site. And then finally, we went to, we got a job painting some apartments. And that paint would make me sick, because I had a ulcerated stomach. And they call it colitis, stomach already. I was always, I was constipated, which I still am, taking, medication for that. But I had a chance to go into doing tile work. This man that we did the apartments, his tile man ran off. And we were doing the job, so he asked us if we would like to do it. We never done it, so he said, I'll show you how, it's easy. So he showed us, my brother Pili and I went, and we did the work, and then went back, and then I told my brother Lee, I said, you know what, Pete is getting discharged, so when you get back, you can, y'all can go together, because I want to do something else. The pain is getting to me. So the man that offered me work, doing power work, so I stayed there and I learned the trade. And it was a different kind of tile, It was made of aluminum, and I had to use some glue to put it on. But I wanted to learn to do this kind of tile, in the bathroom. So I studied. I went to the library, and I got some books, and I studied and everything. And then I went to Mexico City because my mother, she was real religious. And when I was overseas, she had made a promise that if I wouldn't get killed and come back, that she would take me to La Virgen de Guadalupe in Mexico City. So before I got married, that was 1949, we took that trip because she said she wanted to comply with the promise she had made. So we went to Mexico City. And then we came back, it took me It took me over a year and a half to build a house because I built it all by myself. My dad worked real late, you know, and everything, but he was telling me what to do. So after after I got the house finished, the only thing that he helped me was to pour the front porch. And I did everything here. He had a friend that was a carpenter, and he my dad told him that I was getting married, and he had met me, and he told me, "You tell me I'm going to go over there and hang the doors for him." And he came over and I said, "Well, how much are you going to charge?" He said, "Didn't say." So I said, "Well, okay, I'll get some money somehow, you know." And so when he came and hung all the doors in the house and everything, then my dad asked him how much he was going to charge. And he said, "No," he says, "I'm not going to charge anything." He said, "That's the gift to Manuel from me." You know, so that was real nice of him. And I just kept on, you know, and then um, I, I got in, I got a little uh, involved in doing tile work. And I did a lot of saltillo, the hangings, and I would do a lot of custom tile work, you know. You know, they call it customs when you have to, you know, like you see the splash there. They call it a custom job, you know. So I started doing that kind of work, you know, and I did pretty good, but I was going to the doctors all the time. I've been taking medication since I got out of the service, you know, and the uh, the government when I first got out, I got out with 100% disability, and then they start cutting me down, and then they cut me down again, and they cut it all the way down to 40%, and I tried to get it increased, and I never had any luck until this April, when I had the stroke. You know, the doctors over there. Well, I had one in 1995, and and the doctors I was in San Antonio at Arthur Murphy Hospital, and they told me that I that I had uh, that I had a it was a light stroke, but my head injury, I have a plate, had something to do with that, but they still didn't give me an increase until this time in April. And they didn't give me they didn't give me the 100%, but they gave me 80%. But we're still trying to get, you know, the other 20%. And I I worked, you know, all my life, you know, and in 1987 I had a blackout in the driveway. And ever since then, I don't know, something happened to me, you know. I was more or less like discouraged all the time, you know. I didn't feel like doing too much and all that. And that's the way it was, you know. So uh, I got over the 1995 stroke, and then I'm getting over this one too. Thank the Lord. I had a lot of people that prayed in their church, a lot of friends that they visit me in the hospital and everything, you know, and they also prayed for me to get well. And I thank them for that, you know. When I was in the army, you know, when we got into Belgium, we were we landed in Omaha Beach, Okay, this was after D-Day, and also uh, when we were going to land, it was in the afternoon, and we were in the landing barge, and when they overloaded the landing barge. See, the landing board was supposed to go all the way to the beach, edge of the beach, and we were stranded, golly, about a block or more from the beach, and we had to stand there about 5.5 hours because we couldn't sit down, we couldn't squat down, we couldn't do anything. So we were packed like sardines in there, and we had to wait until the engineers would build, one of those walking bridge. And if they got it all the way there, then we got off and we landed. And by that time it was already dark. And it had been raining, so when we landed in the beach, we were real muddy and all that. And like I say, this was after D-Day, but they were still in France. And then they sent us over there, to France. And then we joined the C Company, 9th Division, 1st Army. And when we joined, we were 32, because they divided us up. And we got up there, and then 32 of us went to C Company. And then the rest of them, they were spread out. And when we got up there to the commander of C Company, they met us, and there were about 6 or 8, the captain and 2 sergeants, a corporal, 2 corporals, and a couple of GIs. So one of the GIs asked the captain that, because we started walking, and he said, well, y'all have positions over there. And then one of the guys asked the captain, said, Captain, we were going to meet the rest of C Company. And the captain said, you are the C Company. And that was all of us there, So we advanced from France into Belgium. While we were in Belgium, we stopped in this it was a store, and a few little houses there. And we were there, and then we heard a noise, like pat, 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 pat. And we didn't know what it was, and we looked around and everything, and we didn't see anything, but there were trees there. So when all of a sudden we saw one of these bombs that the Germans made, that I forgot what they made. It was kind of like one of these, what do they call it? Where the football game going up, that take pictures. I can't think of the name of them right now. But the New Year had one, they have one. It's kind of like a balloon, I can't think of the name of it. And that thing was going, and it came right over us and real low. And we started scrambling, getting out of the way, because we thought we were going to land there. But it kept on going, and he landed, golly, about half a mile further up, and when he landed, it exploded. And we got scared because we said if that thing had they probably sent it, because we were there, and they tried to get us, but it overshot. So after that, we advanced, and then we got into Germany. And while in Germany, we went into the dark forest. The reason they call it dark forest because you go in there and it's dark there, and it's just like at night, you can see a little light, but not that much. Once in a while, you run into an area. So we were in that area, you know. So the captain, uh, there were three. We were three Latinos in that company. That's all. The rest of them were Anglos. And so the captain got me and this other veteran, Eusebio Lovato. He was from New Mexico, and he got us to go on scout patrol, be on the outpost every night, every night. You know, all the time they spend over there, we were on the outpost every night. And one day I asked the captain, I said, he would let us call him captain. He told us to call him Red. He said, Red, I said, when you gonna get some relief so we can, you know, rest a bit? And he says, I don't want to. I says, why not? I said, we've been already over 2 months. And I said, no, we need a little rest. You know, after we get back, you know, he said, we got to go on patrol, you know. So we'd go on patrol and come back. And when I asked him that question, you know, he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. He said, I don't trust the other guys. He said, I'd rather have y'all up there than the rest of them. I said, well, okay. So then I had Lovato. I said, you know what? I said, let's get together. When he asks for volunteers, if he chooses you, I'll volunteer. And if he chooses me, you volunteer. So that's how whenever he wanted a detail squad, you know, and we were named all the time, him or me, you know, and we volunteered. So we stayed together, you know, until I got wounded. In fact, he was the one that gave me first aid when I got wounded. But before that, one morning, I remember we were out in the front line, you know, and then all of a sudden the Germans crossed over, and we were actually we got caught by surprise because we didn't even know that they had crossed over, you know, and they were behind our lines, see, and then they crossed over. So then the corporal that spoke German asked them to surrender. They wouldn't do it, so they start firing back at us, you know. And the BAR man that we had, he got shell shocked, so he didn't get to fire anything. Then the sergeant took over, and then it got pretty rough there, you know. And then it slowed down a little bit, and then it got back again, you know. So when it kind of slacked off a little bit, he was holding his rifle, the BAR like this, and then a shot rang and shot both of his fingers off. So then this other GI that was kind of close to him, he said, I'll take over. And he was 19, and so he took over, and then we got back into fighting, you know. So he kept, you know, firing that, and then he got jammed on it. And when he did, I was next to him, so he told me to fire because the Germans were setting up a machine gun, and I was a little lower than he was. So what happened was that he was telling me where to fire, because I could see that we had camouflaged our positions, and that kind of got in the way. So he was telling me where to fire, you know, when I was firing. And so after that, you know, he finally told me, he said, you got him, you know, you knocked him out. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And so then he said, you know what? He said, I'm going to go back and try to fix the BAR gun. And I said, okay. I told him, I said, I'll be there to help because I know how to disassemble and assemble it. And I stayed behind to see if I didn't see any more Germans. And then when I heard somebody grunt and go like that, and he was standing that way, they shot him down from here, and killed him. I I was glad that I didn't go back because I've been with him. I've been killed too. But something told me to stay behind. When I look back, he just fell over. And I don't know where the captain was because I never saw him. And so then by that time the German, we had killed them all. So the thing was over with. So we stayed in that position. And then 2 days later we advanced forwards more, and they were always calling him and telling him we were going too fast to slow down. And so we would slow down and have to wait for him to catch up with him. So then when he said we're going to advance forward, so we did, and I think we advanced about about 300 feet, and we ran to a fence, and we saw these buildings. So I was first scout at that time, and then I called the captain, hey Red, there's buildings over there, what are we going to do? We're going to go across? He said, no, wait. So we went over there and looked at it, and there was a fence, and so we stopped there at the fence, and then then the sergeant came, and then there was another one. There were about 3 or 4 there looking over. So then I told Lovato, I said, you know what, remember what that lieutenant told us in Camp Kilmer? He said, never bunch up. So I said, let's get over. So it was kind of like a little alley kind of, So we went over that way and over here. Then all of a sudden there was they call them burp gun because it was kind of like a little machine gun, and they go burp, burp, but it would fire a bunch of bullets at one time. So they hit the sergeant, and they hit him bad, because we stayed there that night because we couldn't get up because they started firing, and all this time that we were in the front line, they had those artillery firing on us. They called them 88 because there would be one after the other hitting on those trees. They explode. And you could hear the shrapnel flying all over you. You didn't know where to go. A lot of them would get hit that way, So they told us we had to change direction, so we didn't go forward anymore. So we went to the right some, And before we did that, we went back and, kind of reassembled. And they let a bunch of barrage of artillery down on us. And then one of the GIs was in the foxhole, and he got a shrapnel and broke both of his legs. So the captain asked us that he wants some volunteers, and I knew we were going to be it. So sure enough, he called me and Lovato to go help him and another guy. So we went and helped him get him out. And he was a big man. I'll never forget him because his name was Benny Goodman. And I told him one time, I said, you know what? We're lucky because we have you, Benny Goodman. And I saw his band in New York, And I says, then there was another guy, and his name was Glenn Miller, in the same outfit, And I told him, I said, I saw the band Glenn Miller when we went overseas. They were in the same ship, and there was a sergeant, Robert Crawford. He was a movie star, and he joined them. We were in the same ship going over. Getting back over there, we were under artillery fire when we went to get Benny Goodman out of that foxhole. And you wanted to move, but you didn't know which way to move because them things were falling all over you. So then, after that, after we got him out, they came picked him up, and I saw the German coming over, and I asked the sergeant. I saw the German come with a bazooka, and they had just sent in some tanks. And I told the sergeant, I said, "There's a German over there with a bazooka." He said, "Do you want me to fire him?" No, you're just imagining things. I said, "No, I'm not imagining things." I said, "I saw him with that bazooka." He says, "Well, don't fire him." I said, "Okay." So after a while, you know, he got behind a tree and shot at the tank, but there were so many trees that he hit a tree and cut him in half and exploded there before he got to the tank. And then the sergeant said, "You were right, you were right." I said, "I knew I'd seen him." So then they fired into the area where he was, but I don't know if he escaped or not because the grass was kind of high there. So then we took off. Sergeant said, the captain said, "Y'all go." And he says, "We're going to advance to the right." And I said, "Okay." So we took off. And after a while, he says, "I want you to stay here and guard this German pillbox." So they said, "We know there's some German there." And I said, "Okay." So we stayed there. The Lovato, myself, and this corporal that spoke German. So we were there, and then after a while we saw a few Germans come out of and they had a flag, white flag, surrender. And like I say, we were always under those 88 artillery. So when they start firing that, they ran back inside the tank, the pillbox. And after it's over, then they start coming out. And I told him I think there were 8 or 9. He said, "Yeah, something like that." He said, "Oh, that ain't bad." But when they start coming out, we had 29 Germans that we captured. When they surrendered to us. So then, after that, the corporal was searching them. We had to stand guard, and they were searching. And there was one German, that when the corporal searched him, he had a big smile on his face. And I told him, "What? Did you see that?" "Yeah." He said, "He must have something." So when he got through with all of them, I told, "Hey, Corporal," I said, "See that?" He was kind of blonde-headed. I said, "See that German over there?" He said, "Yeah." He said, he had a big smile on his face after you searched him. I said, "I think you ought to search him again." So he went. See, what he did, he was searching him this way. And then when he went back and he told him in German to come forward, and as soon as he told him that, you could see his expression in his face, So when he came and forward, then he searched him like this, and then he go like this, and right in the back here, he had a pistol in the back of his belt, So after a while, a big truck came, and we loaded him on the truck. While waiting for him, before the truck got there, while waiting for him, we heard it was getting dark, and we heard somebody crying. We didn't know who it was, and then we looked over. Lovato and I were always together. We looked over and we saw a German running back toward our line, and I told him, I said, "Hey," I said, "You know what?" I said, "See that German? He's running over there." And I said, "I wonder why." And then we saw another one, so we shot at him and told him to surrender. When he came back, the other one was too far, and we couldn't get him. And then we waited, and here comes a young GI, and he was the one that was crying because they sent him all by himself to bring. I don't know. He said he had about 12 Germans, By the time he got over to us, there weren't but 6, And he was real happy that we we were there, to help him, So after that, we uh, we we loaded him on the truck, and then we took off, and advanced again, and then we got into another battle, and that was when the time I got hit. There were a lot of times that we waited and all that, but one time we were it got pretty pretty rough, and that was the time that I got wounded. And I was calling my friend about where he was. He was telling me, he said, right in front of you. He said, couldn't you see me? I said, no. And I didn't know it. I never felt the shrapnel that hit me in the head. I never felt it. It just happened. I didn't even know that I'd been hit. It tore my helmet, my liner, and then when I put my hand up to see my knuckles, I felt something in the back of my neck. Huh?
Oh, wow.
Okay, so never got what I was saying.
Oh, you were saying that you didn't feel when you got hurt, when you got wounded.
So then he came over. I asked him to come over and give me first aid because about a week before or 2 weeks, we had gotten 3 medics that morning. It got kind of early, It was about 10 or 11 o'clock. And those barrages of artillery, they were always right on top of us, And you never will believe it, 2 of them got hit right there. So they had to leave, And then that evening, it must have been about maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that. Then the other one got hit. So we were out of medics again. Anyway, the Wato gave me first aid, and then the corporal came over. He was from Corpus Christi. And I never did. He told me his name, but since he was in another part of the company and we were on the other, I never got to talk to him. And he was the one that took me back. And I couldn't walk, so he was kind of carrying me, He took me back. And those are some of the things that you never forget, And he even took me back and put me in a slit trench. Foxhole is deep. Slit trench is just about that deep where you can lay down. And he went and dropped me in one of those and said, get in there, So I said, okay. And he laid me in there, And then I felt something underneath me, and I started touching him, and there was I don't know if it was a German or a GI that was dead, and I was laying right on top of him. And those are the things that, go through my mind all the time,
Mm-hmm.
So then, like I said, it got real rough, and they had to withdraw, and this corporal, the Spanish guy, had left me in the slit trench, and they were gonna bomb all that area. And so they got all the way back, and then when they did, well, then he remembered me, and when he remembered me, he took off, and he told me that the captain asked him where he was going. He says, I gotta go get me, He says, no, you can't go over there. He says, because they're getting ready to bomb over there. He said, no, he's my race. He said, I gotta go get him out. So he went and got me out. If it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't be here. Because they bombed all that area real bad, And he brought me back, and then he was telling me that. He said, that captain want me to leave you here, and I told him no way, so he he saved my life, and after that they took me in a jeep. That's all I can remember. They took me in a jeep to the field hospital, and the guy made fun of him because when he first got up there, in France, they gave us ammunition, and then they had these bandoliers, and I had a belt, so the sergeant said, be sure to take plenty of ammunition because if you run out, you're out of luck. And that's what happens with some GIs in North Africa. They run out of ammunition and the Germans ran over and killed them all. So I did what I did. I got bandolier, put it around my waist, beside my belt. And then I put one across here and then one across here. And they were making fun of it. That I look like Pancho Villa.
Pancho Villa.
Yeah, I said, well, that's it. I may look like him, I said, but I tell you what, I said, I'm gonna have enough ammunition to last me. But that time that I knocked that machine gun out, I remember I was firing my M1, and see, it's got 8 rounds in each magazine, and since I had to fire rapidly. When I got through, I hadn't even noticed that my hands burnt with the barrel, and it was hot. Then I picked it up with this hand, and boy, that rifle was really hot. And I remember that young kid, he said, "Golly, you fired that thing just like a BAR." But I was lucky, So I was sent back to the United States, and we were in the middle of the ocean in 1945. What they announced that we were in the middle of the ocean. We were coming home. I was sent back, and I was in Staten Island, in the hospital there. And then they shipped us to Modesto, California, to a hospital over there. And then there I was there until I got discharged in June of 45. Well, we were there in that area where I was telling you that we went. There was kind of like a barn or something like that. This buddy of mine that I had met before, we had spent Easter in his house the year before, in 44. And he was telling me, because the war was over there, and his mother thought that he was killed. So when I got to Modesto, I called his sister, wrote to her rather, and I told her that I was in Modesto. So they wanted me to go over there the following Easter and spend it with him, so I did. And I told his mother, that Alfred is not dead. How do you know? I said, I know he's not dead, And so we went to church and came back home and everything, So that kind of pepped her up, because sadly the other daughter, wrote and told me that her mother had changed a lot since I told her that Alfred wasn't dead. And then soon after that, I got another letter, where they had gotten a letter from the War Department that they had found him. And he was a prisoner there where we were going to attack, but we didn't go that far. And he told me that himself. His name was Alfred Castañeda from Los Angeles. But there were other things, that I did in the Army. I took my basic in Cal Walters College, Texas. I went to Mississippi. That was and a tank gunner there. And we went to the firing range, and it was a 37 and a tank gun, but they put a 22 rifle barrel inside, and we went to shoot at the range out there, you know. Out of 400, I did 350. Shot 350 out of 400. And I don't know how I did it, but I did it. You know, they had the because you had to turn it, you had to elevate it, and then you had to plunge it, and you had to do all that, and those things would be going up and down like this, and you had to be sure. And anyway, I made 350. And this lieutenant was real proud of me. And he gave me a little paper, you know, to not send it home, you know, where they were real proud of me for doing that. And then I was a gunner in a 30 machine gun. And then I drove a Jeep for about a month or so.
When you came back, you said that you were you were very messed up. What do you mean by that? Like, well, you were very sick.
Well, I was, you know, I was having a lot of nightmares. I couldn't sleep at night. And I'd sit up on the porch at night, you know, and my dad told me one time to smoke a cigarette, you know, that would ease, you know, my pain. But when I got out of the service from over there, from California, they never gave me any medication. You know, they just gave me a discharge, and that was it. So I was real nervous, you know, and all these things that I've told you about, those things were just going around and around.
Flashbacks and
And they still do, you know, but not as bad as like that. And and I weighed myself when I got back from overseas, and I weighed 185 pounds. And when I went overseas, I was just weighing 142 pounds. And how much weight I gained. So then when I got discharged, I weighed 165 pounds. And I got discharged in 45. In 46 and 47, that was my real bad days, you know, years. I went down to 128 pounds. You know, I was real nervous, you know, and like I said, I couldn't sleep and all that. And this lady, God bless her soul, she saw me one time and told me, you know, that she could, if I didn't do anything, that, you know, that the way I was going, I was going to die. And how I came to meet her was that I took a cousin of mine to Taylor. And she saw me, and she told my cousin, ask him if he want me out. I can, you know, she was like a curandera. She said, I can, he said he has something in his stomach that's killing him because he's not eating. And that was true because all I drank was coffee, a little piece of toast, and that was it. And I couldn't pass anything.
you went to the curandera.
Mm-hmm. And after that, you know, then she was telling me what to eat and everything, you know, and then I started gaining my weight and everything, you know. And I got back to I think I weighed about 138, 142. So I guess if it hadn't been for her, you know. And then they opened a VA here in Austin, and I started going to the doctor there, you know. And before that, I wrote to Waco And I told him that I wanted to see a doctor, because I met this friend of mine that told me to ride over there. So I saw a doctor in Austin here, and he started treating me too, And so then I was going to go to school to San Antonio, and this is before I took the training at GI Bill, and I was going to go to St. Mary's, and I was going to graduate there, and then they told me if I wanted to stay there, the government would, pay for my for my schooling there, and I told him, I said, okay, but then I got sick. That was the time that I got sick, that I couldn't. So I never did go to St. Mary's. I kid my wife because I tell her, I said I was going to San Antonio, and I said, if I graduate, what I want to become is a lawyer. She told me, if you'd been a lawyer, you never would have met me. I said, yeah, but it never happened. But this is my second wife. My first wife, married with her 20 years. And then she wanted a divorce, so finally gave her to a divorce. Then I was single for 5 years, and then I met my wife, my present wife. And we'd been married 26 years this year. And she had really taken care of me too. When I was in Temple, the first time, I was out there for over a month, and I'd be sitting outside in the bench, on the table there. I'd be sitting there, and then I'd look over, and I said, that looks like our car, and sure enough, that was her. Driving up there, in the afternoon, and I thought, don't be coming so often. I can't be without you, I miss you a lot, We never had been separated, And then this year, the same thing. I'd be eating breakfast in the morning in the dining room, and some guy said, hey, Castillo. He said, here comes your wife again. And they would tell me, oh, it's my wife that come. But she had really helped me a lot, taking good care of me. And I'm 17 years older than she is. And the guy told me, he said, oh man, she just after your money. I said, what money?
Tell me about your school years when you were like in elementary.
What?
School years?
School years?
When you were in elementary?
Okay, we started going to, like I said, my dad, it was rough. It was hardly any work and all that. And we were going to school barefooted in winter because we didn't have any way of buying shoes, And what we'd do, we'd run, so that the feet wouldn't get so cold, And we went to Florida. We do that every time somebody, the dog or, Close the door so they won't come in.
It's too hot out there. They can't stand the heat. It's too
Well,
hot.
okay, when I first went to school, I was left-handed. My oldest sister Mary taught me to write with my left hand. And so when I started school, the teacher would paddle my left hand. She'd get it like this and paddle me with one of the rick-rack things. And she made me write with my right hand. Anyway, I didn't mind it. They said that left-handed were, I don't know, something wrong with them. And we were going to school, and the reason that we got somehow we didn't go to graduate was because we would go to pick cotton every year, and we would go down to through Corpus,
Mhm.
and then Rockstand and in those areas, and they would come back, and by that time in West Texas, they would have a crop over there. So then we would go over there and pick cotton over there, and and then we would come back. By the time we got back, we couldn't go to school until the following year, and that was every year, and that's the reason. Another reason why I got out of school, because I think I spent 3 years in third grade,
Yeah.
but uh, I did pretty good in school, but what happened was that delay of not going back to school in time just set me back.
Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to uh, Fulmore first, and after that, I went to Allen. They had what they call an opportunity, you know. Uh, Part of the school was an opportunity was from someone that we were too big, and so they call it opportunity. So I went to school there, And finally, after that, we went to, they sent us to Blickler High School over there. And after they transferred us over there, that was the time that I got out of school. I never did go back anymore. But we had, there was he was a friend, and he,
We'll press it again.
Okay.
Okay. For how many years did you go to school?
how many years? Well, I went until I was 15 years old.
Yeah. How old were you when you started?
Well, I guess about 8 or whatever. Kindergarten.
Yeah. Um. Um. The education that you received, was it the same as your brothers and sisters?
What?
The education that you received, was it the same as the one that your brothers and your sisters received? Did they go to school, your brothers and sisters?
Yeah, well, they went to school longer than I did. Uh, they were able to go, to a higher grade than I did. Like my brother Pete, he went to the 12th grade.
Graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm. And yes, after all we went through, he sent all his kids to, except one, and they all graduated. They had good jobs and everything. And he had, what, 10, 9,
Yeah.
9 or 10.
Was your school segregated? The school that you went to, was it segregated?
No, it wasn't segregated. I went to, at that time, the Negroes had their own school. There was a little school that was built there on Gibson, off First Street. They knocked it down later, but the school, that's where they went to school. And then when they got to a higher grade, they would go to East Austin.
So, Mexican American children attended the same school as white people did?
Yes.
Okay.
But we were treated,
How were you treated?
well, a lot of them call us Mexicans and this sort of stuff, They would tell us, different things, and all that. And some of them would tell us that we ought to go back to Mexico. you know. And they would call me Pepper Belly, 'cause, you know, 'cause we eat chili pepper. Now they eat their Pepper Belly. And, well, the difference was this. The difference was that the 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 kids from or higher, you know, educated, they wouldn't tell you that. The one that would tell you that were a lot of these posteros, you know, hillbillies. Those were the ones that were always telling us that. You know, the rest of them would tell me. I got along with a lot of them, and then there were some that they were real nice, you know. And I had one that used to live on First Street here, and and uh, and you know, it's just like everything. There's some bullies around, you know. And this his name was Roy Jackson, and he one day he was walking up to school. You know, that was before school started. You know, we would go early because on Wednesday we used to have that was Flag Day. You know, so he was out there, and then this other boy named Johnny Ebell. He was a mean little kid, you know, and he starts hitting him, you know, and there were some other Anglos there. Nobody would get him, and he would kick him and everything, and all he would say, "Don't do it, don't do it." So when I saw nobody stuck up for him, you know, I went over there and I told him, I just grabbed him, I told him, just leave him alone. You know, when he started fighting with me, you know, and we fought for a while, then the teacher came out and no one knew what was going on, you know, and I told her, you know, and then there were some students there and they told her the same thing. He just stuck in, you know, he was hitting him and everything. So him and I became buddies after that. Yeah. And, but, then there was another one. There were some Indians that used to live over here on Third Street, and they were one of their name was the oldest one was Barney Priest, and I don't remember the other one's name. And then there was another one that was handicapped. He used to have to ride a donkey to school at Fulmore, and he would park. I mean, he would tie his donkey around a marigold, you know. And then when he got out of school, he'd go over there and get on that and try to get on top of it. And he was always having problems. So, you know, sometimes I'd be walking out when he was doing that, and I'd go over there and help him get on the donkey. And so one day, you know, I remember that he said, "You know what?" He said, "I have two brothers coming here to school, and they never come help me." He said, won't you ride the donkey with me?" And I said, "Well, okay." So I got on the donkey with him, you know, and man, I was just, you know, coming along like that, and then all of a sudden, somebody grabbed my arm here, and boom, I go down, and what in the heck? And that was Barney, the oldest brother. He pulled me off that donkey. He said, "That's for my brother, it's not for me." His name was Horace. Horace was his name. He said, "I'm gonna tell Mom about you." He said, "He helped me get on my donkey, and you come up here and pull him off." But after that, I didn't ride him, you know. But I would walk with him, you know. And that was every day, you know. And he was real nice and everything, but the other ones, boy, they were mean. In fact, I remember one time we had a fight.
Okay. What do you remember about what was going on in the country and your community when you were growing up?
In the country?
Yeah.
Well, I remember, you know, we used to go out to the country to see, you know, my dad had a friend, you know, and so we would go visit him out close to Maynard over there. And he was raising cows and all of that, chickens and all of that. And we would go out there to because we went with my dad, we would see all of that. And but I had a grandfather. And he came from Mexico, He was from Saltillo, around there, Saltillo. And he was my mother's father. And he was in a car accident one time, and his right hand, I think he landed on his arm or something, He didn't have any more use for it. His living was selling wood, and he planted a pretty nice garden in back of his house, to raise all kinds of vegetables and all of that. And he had some cows, for milk. And I used to go help him feed the cows. And he had some hogs. At that time, they let you have hogs in the city. And he had all that, And we would, like on Saturday, he'd go out to the road, Manchac Road, way out there. And it would take all day long to go there and get some wood. We would help him go put the wood out in one of those ranches that he was out there. This man would let him go pick up wood that was laying around, And we'd help him load the wagon. He had a wagon. And then we'd ride back. So we loved to be on that wagon.
So what was going on in the community when you were growing up? Any like historical events?
The what?
What was going on in your community when you were growing up? Any historical events?
Oh, well, there were a lot of things that were going up, that there was people, at that time people, they were happy, they would make a dance at a house and invite people to go there, Right there where the post office is right now, up here, there was a big house there, and these people lived there. And they would have a dance there almost every Saturday, and anybody could go there, and that's the way life was, and there were other people too, that would have, parties or something like that. But mostly, dancing. There was these two brothers, one of them played the violin, and the other one played the guitar, and they were the one that would play in fact, that's where I learned how to dance.
So, how did you say were you when you got drafted?
I was 18.
18. Okay, and so what were you doing during the 1940s after you came back?
After I came back? Well, after I came back, for 2 years, I didn't do anything. I was all chicken up. And my dad was the one that encouraged me to go with him. And he says, go with me, because he used to do a lot of work in Travis Heights. And he would ask me, won't you go over there? And he did some in infield too. And so I started going with him, and he says, get one of the brushes and, you can do this and that, I didn't know anything about painting. So he told me, he says, take a brush and try it, and if you dirty the glass, well, then we can clean it later and all that. And he had a real good study hand. He didn't have to have so I learned how to paint. And so at that time, in those years, there were no rollers to do any texture work. Okay, so my dad had invented. He made a kind of like a wood plane, and he put carpet around it. And then he tried to in different uh, pieces of sheetrock. You know, he would brush the texture on it, and then he put it on that carpet thing, you know, and he would crisscross it, you know, like this. And if you wanted it, the texture real thin, he'd make the texture real soft. If you wanted it a little heavier, he'd make it a little thicker. And if you wanted big staples on there, well then he would make it a lot. And that's how we did the work, because there were no rollers at the time.
Okay. So what did your family, friends, neighbors think about you going to the service?
Well, my dad and my mother didn't want me to go. But like I say, even Mr. Wilkie, God bless his soul, he went and talked to me at the local board, because he said he needed me there, you know. And he liked the work I did. So we went over there and they told me, said, well, he's going to have to go to physical, and if he doesn't pass it there, well, then he can stay. But if he passes that, then he'll have to go. So like I say, I wanted to go, so I went.
What did you think about, or what do you remember about the war when it started? Well, you were 15, right? Because you went when you were 18?
Yeah. Well, I remember it was a radio, and I remember, you know, the day that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and there was a lot of things going on. You know, that's all you could hear on the radio. You didn't have to be there. But you know, at that time, I didn't think too much about it. You know, and then when they came up that you have to register, you know, and go and register at your local. You know, I didn't think I was going to go that soon, but I did.
Okay, so did you serve in any civilian conservation camps?
Civilians?
Civilian, no?
No.
You were just drafted? Okay.
Well, just, the camps, you know, where they were. I
Okay.
was in Mississippi, Camp Van Dorn, Camp Walters in Fort Worth, in Colorado Springs, and then from there we went to the Hunter Liggett Reservation close to Camp Robbins, and then we went overseas.
Okay. And in your opinion, were there changes in the life of Mexican Americans in the decades following the war?
I think there were. I myself, I learned a lot of things that I think that if I would have stayed, and not gone to the service, I don't think I would have learned, these other things that I saw. I met a lot of friends, and a lot of them had graduated from high school. And they were Spanish, and I remember one friend, his name was Ralph Pena. He was from Los Angeles too, and he had already graduated from high school and everything. And his father put him through school because his mother had died. So it was just him and his dad. And his dad put him through school and everything, And he was real smart because he could take pictures in the camera, and develop them and all of that. And he was a good sportsman, he liked to run and all of that. He liked to box. One time we were playing, and he says, "You know what? We'll go out together." He says, "You got to learn how to fight because we go out there and get to fight." He said, "Let me go get some gloves." I said, "Okay," so we were out there, and he said, "You got to cover your face." And one time they opened like, boom, That was the end of that training.
Okay. Do you think that a lot of difficulties that you faced were because you were Mexican American? Or
Well, I don't know. I got along with almost everybody. Maybe there were a few that didn't, especially guys from Tennessee and uh, from Atlanta, Georgia. They were a little different, But the rest of them that I met, they were pretty good. Well, I better not say it. Well, I'll just say that I had 4 fights while I was in the Army, and the last one was just before I got to the front lines.
was it because of racial discrimination? Well, what were those fights about?
Well, it was this ex-paratrooper,
Mm.
and he went into our barracks just before we went into combat, and he was big and stout and everything, and he was running. He was always, hitting the other GIs with his elbow and tripping them, pushing them, and everything, and I would see that, and I would say, how can those guys stand there? So one day, I was talking to this friend of mine, and I told him, I said, man, how can those guys take on it? And he'd do that all the time. And I don't know how those guys could take it, So I said, you know what, if that guy ever does that to me, I said, I don't know what I'll do. And he said, man, that guy's too big for you. I said, I don't care, but I'm not going to take that. So it happened that a few days after that, the guy goes over there, and I was going into my bunk. And he came and pushed me, and I told him, I said, listen, I don't want no problem with you, I don't want any problem with you, so you just take off and leave me alone. He said, well, what you going to do about it? I told him, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but I said, I'm not those guys that you've been pushing around over there. So he said, well, I want to know what you're going to do about it. And they had told us to sharpen our bayonet because we were going into combat. So I had my bayonet there, and he got real close to me, and he said, I want to know what you're going to do. So I told him, I said, you want to know what I'm going to do? I said, yeah. And he wasn't expecting it. I grabbed him behind the head, and I pulled my bayonet and put the bayonet right in his throat. And I cut him, I mean, I didn't, because when I tuck it in, I pulled his head up and cut him a little bit. And I told him, I said, listen, I said, those guys that you were doing to pushing them and everything, I said, they were afraid of you. I said, but I'll tell you what. I said, I'm not afraid of you. And I said, I'll tell you one thing. If you bother me again, I said, I'm going to the front line and I'll kill you. So then he was just standing there, and then guys tell me that he was, how a fight is? You got a bunch of guys over there. And the guy says, I told you better not fool around with that Texan because they'll kill you like a dog. But anyway, I let him go, and I told him, I said, another thing, I said, you better leave all my friends in this barracks or my friends, and I don't want you to be pushing them around anymore. So, but you know what? We became friends. Yeah, well, he needed, I guess, I'll tell you what, when we were in Camp Kilmer, there were some paratroopers there, and we had a big fight there one time. Before we went overseas, we were getting ready to go overseas, and the same thing, And they said they were going to go over to our barracks and do this and that, but they never showed up. But that was the first time. I think, just like the Marine think they're real tough. They're just like the paratrooper, they think they're real tough.
Mm-hmm.
And, but if you're not afraid,
Do you remember any racial conflicts here during the 50s and the 60s? You don't have any experience?
Well, oh yes, I remember, uh, this was, yeah, that was in that time. Well, when we used to go pick cotton in West Texas. You know, my dad would stay here and work. If he leave the work, you know, he would uh, lose the job, and then when he come back to town, you know, he couldn't get a job. You know, so he said, "I'm gonna stay and keep working, and y'all can go." And he says, I was the oldest. I would drive the car. You know, we had a little trailer, put everything in there. And I remember one day, my mother said, "I sure want to get a cup of coffee," you know. And we were traveling, you know, so I went into this restaurant. I just walked in like I did here in Austin, you know. And I don't know what little town it was, you know, but I walked inside, you know, and I said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want some coffee to go." And the lady said, "Okay." He said, "You know what? You just go outside and wait on that window." I said, "Okay." So I went outside and I waited. And then I asked the lady, I said, why couldn't I wait inside the restaurant for the coffee? He said, "Because we don't serve Mexicans here." And I said, "You don't?" I said, "Well, just keep your coffee." I said, "I don't want it." "Well, what am I going to do with it?" I said, "Drink it, do whatever, throw it away." I'm not going to drink it because I got a big, you know, or a big cup, you know. So we took off, and then we went down to another little restaurant, you know, and they sold me the coffee there, you know. And I went inside, and those people, they treated me okay, you know, inside. But I think there were just a few people here and there that did like it, and that was it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then when I got out of the service, that I had to go to Waco. They sent me the bus fare, and I stopped. The bus stopped in Round Rock, and that was a stop for the bus. And they wouldn't let you inside either. They wouldn't even serve you. I forgot that. I remember it was a big old fat lady. And I stopped by there, you know, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee," you know. And I went inside, and the driver said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm gonna get a cup of coffee." He says, "They don't serve it." And I said, "And y'all stop here to pick up people?" I said, I wouldn't give them their business, you know. And so I told the lady, I said, "You know, when I go to Waco," I said, "I'm going to tell the people. I'm going to tell the people in Waco about you turning me down coffee." I said, "I went to defend you in the war, and I got wounded over there, and then you treat me that way." But when I went to Waco, I forgot all about it. So I'm telling you. They gave me a bunch of exams and all of that. Yeah.
Okay.
There was another one that in Seguin. I took my mother's friend over there to see a doctor there in Seguin, and we walked in there, you know, too, you know. This little boy, he was about 6 years old, and he told me, he said, "I'm hungry." I said, "Well, let's go get a hamburger." "Do you like hamburger?" "Yeah." So I saw a restaurant across the street. There was a main square there in Seguin. So we walked in there, you know, we sat on the counter, and those waiters just kept going up and down, up and down. And finally told one, I said, "Listen," I said, why don't you wait on it?" He said, "I'm busy," you know. And so then another one by, and I said, "Listen," I said, "why don't you serve us?" And I said, "We've been here already almost 40 minutes. And, "Well, I don't know," you know. I said, "Well, who's the manager? And who's the owner?" "Oh, we'll get him," you know. So after a while, a man comes out, you know, and it was a German person, you know. So he comes out and he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I want to get some service." I said, "He wants a hamburger," and I said, "I'll take one too, and a cup of coffee, and he wants a Coke." He said, "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't serve Mexican here." You know, and I got mad too. You know, and I told him off. I said, "Listen," I said, "You know what?" He said, "You're German, aren't you?" "Yes." "Yes." I said, "You know what?" I said, "I just got back from Germany, And I said, I hope the German that I killed were your relatives. And I walked out. And all the people in the restaurant just looked at me, funny. I said, oh, what? I'm going to have a fight on my hands. But nothing happened. We walked out and we went to a drugstore and he got what he wanted. But that was the third time.
When was this? Like,
This was, I think it was about 46, 47.
okay. Where, do you remember any organizations,
Any what?
trying to fight for Mexican American to have better citizenship status?
The fight for that. Well, the only one I can remember is the GI Forum. Dr. Garcia was the one that did a lot for the Mexican people. And
During what years?
well, I think he started around that time. About
50s?
the 40s or the 50s, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that those movements had impact?
Oh, sure. Sure did. Because later on, noticed that it started getting, a little more where they would serve you and all of that. And then I forgot now what year it was that the government came out with that you can't discriminate, So I know that the neighbors, when I was in California, I went to a restaurant there one time. There were colored guys sitting all around me there, around us, and I said, golly, they don't do that in Austin, I didn't know, that over there, there was no segregation at all. And then, like in New York, the same thing, I was in New York and Maryland, same thing. Camp Kilmer.
Okay. So, Mrs. Castillo, she's your second wife, right?
Yes.
And where did you meet her?
I met her at a dance.
Okay. And her name is?
Delia.
Delia.
Castillo.
Do you have any children with her?
How's it?
Children? You have
No,
children with her?
I didn't have any children with my first wife or with her. So it was what they call it? Dry run.
Dry run. Okay.
But I think my brothers took up for me.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you do have seen changes for Mexican Americans, right?
I have what?
You've seen changes?
Oh yes. I've seen a lot of changes. Yeah, it's not like it used to when I got out of the service anymore. It's not like that anymore.
When you came back, you saw that there was, like when you went, was it one way, and when you came back, was it a different way? Were you treated differently? Like better?
Well, it was a little better, but not that much until, I think it didn't start until about the 50s, I guess, or something like that. When everything started getting a little better, and all. And I guess, in my mind, I think that a lot of people thought that we were all wetbacks, and it wasn't like that. I was born here in South Austin, not too far from here.
And so was your mom, right? Your mom was born
Well,
here.
my mother was born in San Marcos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if my dad was born in Monterey or here. Actually, was here. I know his father died when he was 9 years old.
Okay. Go ahead.
He told me one time that He was the oldest. There were just three, him and his sister and another brother. In fact, the brother, my uncle just died last year, and he was almost 100 years old. My mother died. My dad died of cancer, and he was 57, and he died in 52. My mother died, I think, about 3 years ago, and she died on December the 24th.
Oh.
The 24th, and that was in December, January, February the 7th. She would have been 100 years old.
She was 99 when she died?
Huh?
She was 99 when she died?
He was almost, well, 2 more months, she'd been 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother, her mother, the one that tell you that she walked up the step, she died at 97, but the following day she was going to be 98. That was her mother. So I plan on living 100 years.
How old are you right now?
77.
77. So what problems do you think that need to be resolved for the Mexican Americans right now, nowadays?
Nowadays, I think the I read a lot, and I read where a lot of Mexican people want to borrow money from the banks, and you always get turned down, and that's one of the things that should be straightened out, that just because there's some Latinos that could borrow money and everything, but then they won't pay back, and they think that everybody's going to be like that, and then not everybody's like that, So they need to
Not generalize.
Yeah, help the people, when you go to get a loan, help them, and that way they can better themselves off, And the one thing that I see, like I have a niece, that's I don't talk to, I don't talk bad about her, but I'm talking about her ways, my brother Pete raised her and everything, and you raised, however you could. Well, now she went to school, graduated and everything, and she's got a good job with the controller's office, And my sister, her mother, was telling Billy and I, that sometimes now she thinks that she's better off than the rest of the Spanish people, and it shouldn't be that way, And I was involved in politics, for quite a while, and when I just stepped back was when President Kennedy was killed. In fact, that time was one of the times that I was sick. And I got sick, and I was watching TV when it come on TV, that he had been shot. And I prayed for him, that he would make it, but he didn't. But anyway, my mind kind of goes off.
That's okay. So how were you involved in the community?
I was, at one time we formed a PASO organization. PASO? You remember that? Okay. That was political organization, Spanish organization. I think that was the name of it. And we had we had a lot of towns that were involved in it, you know. But then it's just like I say, some of uh, the guys, once they get up there, you know, they forget about the others. And I don't think that's right, because we helped a lot of them, you know, and then they just forget about you. You know, then they look up to yourself. I'm going to tell you one now, but one is John Trevino.
Angelina.
Once he got up there, we helped him the first time, and then after he got up there, he wasn't even paying attention to the Spanish people. He was working out with the other guys, you know. And so Bishop Moya was okay, but then he got off the wrong foot. That's when he got booted out. Yeah. But the that organization was good because we elected some officials that, you know, that
You represented you guys?
mhm. I remember we backed what was his name for Attorney General, and Gabriel Gutierrez, the attorney. He had just gotten out of law school. Hadn't been too long, and his last name was Crawford. I can't think of his first name. And he was a state attorney general, and he named Gabriel Gutierrez as his assistant. You know. But then I don't know what went on there that they brought up some kind of charges, this and that, and then they made him resign. You know, and that's the way that's the way the political is. You know, they can get you, you know, bring charges of this and that. You know, and they can put you out or ruin your name, your political life and all of that.
Mm-hmm. So what happened to Paso? It just got.
Well, what happened was that after a while, you know, like I say, some people would
Forget? We'll forget about the ones in the middle.
well, yeah, they go to somebody and talk to them, you know, and then those people offer them work, you know, I mean, offer them money so they can work against the organization. That's what happened in what's the name of that town? I can't think. It's going out towards El Pasos.
What is it? Amarillo?
Huh?
Amarillo?
No, Amarillo. It is.
Going to El Paso?
Yeah, to El Paso, back over here. Not too far from here.
Oh, that's.
Kind of like Aristo Spring back in there somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then one of the guys, you know, that he got pretty involved, you know, and pretty powerful. And after a while, he wanted to dominate the whole group. And you don't do that. We had the same thing. We had the same thing here, or the same problem here with Roy Velasquez.
Roy Velasquez.
You know, he would make deals over there and come over, and we had this organization. Well, it wasn't an organization; it was just a group. And he would come and he would tell you the deal that he would make until after we were working together. And when we voted against him, you know, something he brought up, you know, we didn't like it. You know, well, if it was a candidate, you know, then we wouldn't back, you know, the group wouldn't back him up, and he would get mad, you know, and all that. So things like that, you know, and then that's what discouraged, you know, the group from working, you know, together. They think that somebody's gonna leave you, you know, and they go to where they get the money, you know, and leave the rest of them, you know. I remember one time there was a guy here who was a Puerto Rican. His name was Robert Canino, and he was running for state representative. And I helped him in his campaign and everything, you know. I let him use my truck. I had 2 trucks. I let him use one of my trucks to, to have these speakers, on the streets and everything. And I helped out too. We helped on the elections and and everything. And then later on, he started dealing himself. And we had a candidate already, and we endorsed him, and he was the president, in charge. And he turned right around and goes with the other group, and being the president, that was bad. So after that, he ran for a state representative, and he didn't make it. So then he moved out. I hear that in Florida now. But things like that, but if you was to stick together, and work together, then you can stay and you can do more that way than start fighting among each other,
Okay. So what advice do you have for younger generations?
Well, I think that right now I see that there are a lot of uh, teenagers involved in dope, drugs, and all of that. And one of the things that I've been against is that I never had any children, but I think that the whoever brought the idea, up, that you can spank your children, they did a big wrong thing there. Because if you don't start controlling when they're little kids, you're not going to control them after they grow up. Okay, and this is you spank them. I remember my mother used to spank us, and we never, thank the Lord, we never were involved in getting in jail and anything like that, and fighting in the streets and all of that, and so it starts when you're a little boy and to grow up. Just like the girls do, the same thing with the girl. Of course, there's always somebody in there is gonna, yeah, the rotten apple they call it. My brother Pete has a boy, and he's the only one that's been in trouble, with the law. He spent time in the penitentiary, and my brother, first time he told me, he said, I'm going to get you out. He said, second time, I'm not going to do it. So second time he spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 years in jail. And my sister-in-law told me that he went, I would go over there, and see him, and he promised him to do this and that. He got out, still the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
So there's some that are hard-headed, and you're never going to get them straightened out,
Yeah.
But my wife and I, when my mother was 90 years old, turned 90 years old, we made her a party, a birthday party. And I always loved mariachi, I played myself too a little bit. And then she told me here, that my brother's niece was getting up. She got 3 girls, and she was giving them up because she was going out with a Negro and he didn't like them. And she was going to give them up for adoption. And said, we didn't have any kids that why didn't we ask her for one, So we were going to ask for one. Her name was Hope, who was the smallest one, And my sister had already asked her for that one. So then she told us she had Serena and Julia. So we thought, well, we'll take Julia. And then we asked her, what you going to do with Serena? She said, well, I'm going to put her up for adoption. So then my wife and I would talk and said, why don't we take both of them? Maybe let's try and see. And I was working at the time, and I was making, good living and everything, you know. So what happened was that she agreed, you know, that we'd take both of them. We kept them for 2.5 years, and they changed a lot, and the I would help them with their homework. Like I said, I just went to 5th grade, but as you grow older and everything, you learn more. And I think when I was in the service, that helped me because I learned to speak more English, you know, and that helped me a lot, you know. So when 2.5 years, she come back and she wanted the girls to see them, you know. So then we let them take them, you know. And then we went out of town because we used to play. My wife sang and I played in the choir in church. So we told her she could keep them, you know. When we got back, then she said the girl said they didn't want to come back, which I knew was a lie. But anyway, the last three report card that Sarita had, that was the oldest one. She was on the honor roll 3 times. The first time she won, but the last 3 times she was on the honor roll. And then Julia was getting up there too, you know. She was a little slower in learning. And and I helped them with their homework and everything. That I find that a lot of people, parents, they should help their kids, you know, help them in their homework, you know, and everything, and that would really help them out because when they came here, they didn't mind and everything, and I had to talk to them, explain to them why they would go to school, and both of them want to go to the bathroom, they just get up and go. They wouldn't even ask permission. So I started telling them what had to be done and everything, and how to behave in school and everything. And the teachers told us that they would be looking up in the ceiling and they asked them a question, they didn't know what it was. So they weren't even paying attention. They were in school 2 days, and in 2 days the teachers, both of the teachers got in separate grades. They knew that they asked them that they weren't staying with their mother anymore. They were staying with somebody else. You know. And they said, yes, we're staying with Uncle Manuel, you know. We'll tell them to come Friday, we want to talk to him. So that when the teachers told her that second day, well, the first day, you know, they said they're not staying there with him. And so later on, my niece took them away, you know, and oh, that was a big mess. But that was one of the things that I've seen, you know, that I learned that if you help the kids, you know, they would better themselves, you know, and talk to them. You don't have to get mad at them, you know. You can just talk to them and everything, you know. It's I think everything would be okay.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you would like to say?
I think I've said enough.
Okay. Well.
Well, I like to say this. I want to thank y'all for taking the time and doing this. And I think y'all doing a great job in doing what you're doing. And I hope that y'all get some more members to speak up. This neighbor of mine, he was in the Marines, and he won the Silver Star, you know, and the Bronze Star. And I'm trying to see if I can get.
Is that the one you told me you'll get his number?
No, no, he was in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to see if I can get, you know, because I talked to this colonel one time. I did a job for him, and we start comparing, you know, our time in the war, you know. And I was telling him, you know, he told me what he went through and all that, and then I was telling him. And he says, did you get an award for knocking that machine gun out? And I said, no. I said, my problem is that the guy that told me he got killed, you know, and you know, so I don't know. But then when we took I told him about taking Benny Goodman out, and I said we were under artillery fire. He said you should have got a award for that. and he said, and I told him about capturing those Germans, 29 Germans. He said you should have got another award for that. And I told him, I said, well, the captain that was our captain, I said, he didn't know anything about the infantry. I told him, I said, every time a plane would fly over, he said, that's where I should be, you know. And I said, why? He said, well, I was a pilot, and they took me out and sent me over here. And I said, no wonder he didn't award anybody anything like that. I think that boy that got me back, that corporal, from corporals, they went over there and you know, he put his life in danger to go get me out of there. And, you know, the artillery had come down, but he was ready to, you know, and he took a chance. If it come down before he got me back, you know, well, that was something else. But you know, that I think that he should deserve an award of some kind too, you know. And I don't know, but I wish y'all both success in what y'all doing. I think y'all doing a great job.
Thank you. We appreciate you helping
very
us.
much.
Okay. No, we've seen snow here in Texas, but I don't know where you.
So did you see any snow in France? Did you see bad weather over there?
No.
No?
In fact, I was thankful that you know that I